rented a cabin a few years ago. I was 35, and my family needed a break from work and school. The place was old and surrounded by tall pine trees. At first, it seemed like a good idea, but it didn't take long for that feeling to change. On the first night, I heard scratches coming from the floorboards. It was around midnight. I told myself it was probably just an animal. My family was sound asleep, and I didn't want to worry them. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just the cabin's charm. The next day, the scratching got louder. I also heard what sounded like giggles echoing through the halls. My heart raced. I thought maybe I was just tired. I chalked it up to my imagination. My kids were playing in the living room when I discovered a small rusted toy under the couch. It looked old, worn, and rusty. I held it up to show my wife, but she laughed, saying it must have belonged to a child from long ago. I smiled back, but unease settled in my stomach. I didn't like things that didn't belong to us. A couple of days later, I searched for blankets in a dusty cupboard. That's when I found a torn photograph. It showed a family in front of the cabin, smiling. They looked happy, but their eyes were unsettling. I felt chills run down my spine. Who were they? Why was this photo hidden? I showed it to my family, but they didn't share my concern. They were too busy enjoying the vacation, while I couldn't shake my questions. On our last night, everything escalated. The scratching turned into loud pounding. I was terrified. It felt like something wanted to break free. I wanted to check, but I couldn't move. My body felt heavy with fear. I didn't want to wake my family, so I just sat on the edge of the bed holding my breath. That's when I heard a giggle right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. I looked back at my family, and they were all asleep, completely unaware. I felt completely alone. The strange happenings were tangled up in my mind. Suddenly, I heard a whisper, softer than before. "Play with us." My heart stopped. I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. Right then, my mind couldn't grasp what was happening. I felt trapped between my fear and the possibilities around me. Then everything faded. I don't remember the minutes that followed. I just know my family woke up the next morning as if nothing had happened. We packed up and left the cabin. But I can't forget those days. The scratching, the laughing, the haunting photo. I still don't know what I experienced that week. Every time I think of it, I feel that same chill. What really happened? What was it that wanted to play? I guess some questions don't have answers. After we got home, life resumed its usual pace. My family didn't mention the cabin again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us back. I tried to push it aside, focusing on work and the kids, but the unease lingered like a shadow. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, I noticed my daughter, Lily, staring intently past me. Her eyes were wide, and she seemed lost in thought. I turned to see what had caught her attention, but there was nothing there. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, concerned. She blinked, her gaze returning. "I thought I saw a little girl," she said softly, almost as if she didn't want to say it too loud. My stomach dropped. "Where?" I pressed. "By the window," she replied, still looking uncertain. My wife chuckled lightly, brushing it off as a child's imagination. I forced a smile, but inside I felt a knot of worry tightening in my chest. Later that night, I was reading a book in bed when I heard the faintest giggle echoing through the house. The sound was so similar to what I'd heard in the cabin that my heart raced. I put the book down and walked to the hallway. The house was dark, and the only light came from the moon filtering through the windows. I called out for Lily, but there was no answer. I quietly opened her door, half expecting to find her sprawled out, dreaming. But she wasn't there. Panic shot through me. I quickly hurried to my son's room, and there he was, sound asleep. I rushed back to the living room, scanning every corner. "Lily," I called again, more urgently this time. That's when I heard it. A soft whisper, almost like a song, drifting down from the attic. My breath caught. Was it possible? I had thought we left everything behind. Against my better judgment, I grabbed a flashlight and crept up the stairs. The familiar creaks of the floorboards resonated through the quiet. As I reached the attic door, I hesitated. Memories of that last night spent in the cabin flooded back. Deep down, I felt that something dark was waiting for me. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. Dust particles danced in the beam of my flashlight. The attic was empty but felt alive, charged with an unsettling energy. In the far corner, something glinted. I stepped closer to investigate and gasped. It was another photograph, this time framed. It wasn't just any picture. It was the same family from the cabin photo, but there was a small girl standing in front of them. She looked eerily similar to Lily. My heart raced as the whispering escalated into laughter, filling the attic with an air of malevolence. "Play with us," it echoed, pulling at me to look deeper into the shadows. Suddenly, the light flickered, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. Someone, or something, was there with me. I stumbled back, nearly falling down the stairs, my mind racing. What was happening? I had to find Lily. I crashed into her room looking for any sign of her presence. When I turned to her bed in the dark, I nearly screamed. She was gone. My heart raced, panic clawing at my throat. "Lily!" I shouted, desperate. My voice echoed through the empty house. Silence swallowed my call. The cold air hung heavily, and every shadow inside felt like it was closing in on me. I rushed back to the attic, hoping against hope that maybe she had sneaked back to find me. But the room was just as I left it, still, dark, and unsettling. The eerie laughter had faded, replaced by the suffocating quiet. I aimed my flashlight around again, searching the edges of the room. The glint from the picture frame was still there, taunting me. Instead of focusing on it, the picture of Lily's doppelganger, I spun on my heels, ready to search the rest of the house. My mind swirled with fear and confusion. Where could she be? I checked the bathroom, the closets, every place I could think of, but there was no sign of her. Just as I was about to head downstairs, a soft creak came from behind me. I turned to see the attic door slowly swinging closed. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I sprinted forward, pushing the door open again. Darkened corners hid my daughter from view. "Lily!" I called, but it felt as if the house was swallowing my cries. Then I heard it again, the faint giggle followed by whispers. "Come play." Was it a trick of my mind? "Lily!" I screamed, but the only reply was that childlike laughter. Tears brimmed in my eyes. I felt my body move ahead of my mind. I jumped down the stairs, my hands shaking as I stumbled into the kitchen, hoping for a miracle. But I only found the emptiness screaming back at me. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. I whipped around, and my breath hitched. There, standing in the doorway to the living room, was a girl. Just a silhouette, but unmistakably a child. She looked just like Lily, only off. I opened my mouth to call to her, but I couldn't make a sound. My heart raced as she darted into the next room. With no other choice, I followed her like a moth to a flame. The living room was dim, illuminated only by the moonlight streaming through the windows. I felt dizzy as I rushed in, and when I turned to look for the girl again, she had vanished. I let out a shaky breath, scanning each shadow and crevice. Then my heart sank. On the wall, in soft, faded chalk, were letters scrawled across the surface. "Join us," it read. I backed away slowly, my pulse quickening. The air felt heavier, thick with dread. I looked around, now aware of the sensation that accompanied the darkness, the feeling of being watched, of something lurking just out of sight. Instinctively, I turned toward the stairs, ready to flee back upstairs, back to the attic. I needed to find Lily. But then the whispers returned, louder this time, a chorus drawing me closer, all urging me to stay. "Play with us." That's when I saw her. A small hand emerged from the shadows, beckoning. A chill slid down my spine, paralyzing me in place. I stepped forward, my mind foggy with fear, as darkness crept up from the corners of the room. I took a hesitant step toward the shadow, my instinct to run clashing with a desperate need to find Lily. The whispers wrapped around me like a blanket, promising comfort and play. It was wrong, so very wrong, but the urge to follow was overwhelming. Then, the hand darted back into the dark, just out of reach. My heart sank deeper. "Lily!" I called again, my voice trembling. I turned to leave, to escape this madness, but the whispers surged, drowning my thoughts. "Stay with us," they cooed, and I stumbled back, nearly colliding with a chair. I needed to get out. I needed to find the real Lily, not this echo of her. I rushed toward the door but stopped short. The entrance was no longer there. Confusion settled heavy in my gut. Instead, another room stood before me, one I didn't remember. It was small, the walls lined with dusty bookshelves, filled with worn-out toys that looked almost alive in the shadows. A small doll caught my eye, its eyes wide and unblinking. It was positioned as if waiting for someone to play. My stomach churned. I hesitated, then walked in. Just as I crossed the threshold, I heard a soft thud behind me. I froze, turning slowly. The door was gone. The shadows closed in around me, and I was trapped. My breathing quickened as I tried to find a way out. I focused on the doll, needing to keep my mind anchored to something solid. As I approached, the air grew thick with the scent of must and something sweet, almost sickening. "Lily," I whispered, my voice echoing in the eerie space. The doll's eyes seemed to follow me, and for a heartbeat, I could almost feel Lily's presence. My heart leaped, but it quickly faded into dread. Then, I heard the giggle again. It was closer now, creeping behind me. "Come play." I spun around, but found only darkness. The voices filled my mind, a chaotic mix of children's laughter and pleading tones. They wrapped around me, urging me to join them, to leave behind the fear. I backed away slowly, longing to break free from the overpowering calls. I stumbled against the doll's shelf, the porcelain face of the doll suddenly striking me with its haunting resemblance to Lily. I gasped. This couldn't be a coincidence. I turned back, moving toward the far wall where a faint light glimmered through cracks. Hope flickered inside me. I rushed toward it until something collided with my shoulder, sending me sprawling to the floor. My heart raced as I looked up. A figure emerged from the shadows, ethereal and flickering in the dimness. It was a girl. Small, with wild, dark hair and those same hollow eyes. She pointed at me, her face transforming into a smirk. "Play with us," she said, and the whispering chorus gained volume, drowning out my thoughts. I scrambled back, though the light teased me just a step away. I needed to break through to whatever lay beyond, to escape this nightmare. I couldn't let them take me. With one final push, I made a desperate run for the glimmering light, but the girl lunged, and then everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness consumed me, my body hitting the cold floor. I blinked, trying to regain my senses. My heart pounded against my chest. I reached out into the void, feeling nothing but emptiness. Then, slowly, light began to seep back into my vision, blinding at first. When the darkness lifted, I found myself alone in a narrow corridor. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, faded pastel colors long forgotten. The air smelled of dampness and decay. I pushed myself up, shaking off confusion. Where was I? I took a cautious step forward, desperate to gather my bearings. The corridor stretched on, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. It felt like a tunnel leading me to something I wasn't prepared to face. The disorienting echo of children's laughter bounced off the walls, but I couldn't tell from where it came. "Lily!" I shouted, my voice faltering as the laughter shifted into soft whispers again. The corridor abruptly ended at a door. It appeared ancient, its wooden surface warped with age. I hesitated, glancing over my shoulder, feeling as if eyes were watching me from the shadows. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. I turned the knob, and it creaked open, revealing a room swathed in darkness. A heavy curtain blocked out most light. I could barely make out shapes in the gloom. My feet moved of their own accord, and I stepped in, needing to know what was inside. The air was thick here, heavier than before. As I drew nearer to the light filtering through the curtain, I noticed a few scattered toys on the floor. the remnants of what should have been a child's sanctuary. Just then, a small figure darted across the room. My breath caught in my throat. I darted toward the silhouette. "Lily!" The figure stopped, slowly turning. It wasn't Lily. It was a boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with ragged clothes and disheveled hair. His eyes were wide and gleaming, but there was emptiness behind them. "Play with us," he said, his voice a chilling echo of the whispers that haunted me. Frantically, I glanced back towards the door. The corridor felt miles away. As I considered my escape, the boy began to move towards me, his steps eerily deliberate. "No!" I shouted, raising my arms to shield myself. "Where is Lily? What do you want?" The boy stopped, tilting his head, an unsettling grin stretching across his face. "You're here now. You have to stay." The room began to tremble. The toys clattered against the floor as if animated by an unseen force. Panic surged through me. I bolted for the curtain, clawing at the fabric to tear it aside. Light poured in, but as I pulled, the boy lunged forward, reaching for me with outstretched hands. In that moment, the light broke free, illuminating the room and the boy, revealing an array of dolls, each one with hollow eyes. I felt my stomach drop as their strange smiles twisted into grotesque forms. I jerked backwards, fear propelling me into the wall. Then, the ground shifted again, and darkness descended. "Don't go," echoed in the air, melding with the whispers as I braced myself for whatever was coming next. I stumbled backwards as the darkness enveloped everything again. My senses were twisted, the whispers growing louder, overlapping like a chorus of lost souls. Panic surged through me, but the weight of the shadows pressed down harder, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't understand what was happening or how I had ended up here. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the darkness. It was a sound I'd heard before, wood splintering. I startled, my heart racing. The memories came rushing back. The cabin, the trip with my family. Everything felt so distant now. With shaky breaths, I stumbled forward into the darkness, prompted by a desperate need to escape. My hands brushed against the rough walls, searching for anything to guide me. "Lily!" I called out again, hoping for any response. My voice trembled, cracking with fear. It felt as though the walls themselves were closing in. Then, without warning, the darkness pulled back again, revealing the same dim room I'd just escaped. But it was different this time. The toys were gone. The floor was bare, except for a dust-covered doll sitting in the center, its glassy eyes staring directly at me. I approached the doll reluctantly. Its dress was torn, ragged, as if it had been abandoned long ago. I reached out to touch it, my fingers trembling. As I did, I felt a cold gust of air brush past me, and I spun around, my heart pounding. There was movement near the doorway. The silhouette of the boy had returned, now standing just outside the dim light. "You didn't want to play," he said, his face partially obscured by the shadows, but I could still see that unsettling grin. Desperate, I shouted, "Where's Lily? Where are you keeping her?" His grin faded into an expression I couldn't quite read. "She doesn't want to play either." Chills crawled up my spine. The boy's words sent shockwaves of dread through me, hinting at something far worse than mere games. I had walked into a nightmare, and every second felt like it was stretching into infinity. I needed to get out, but the corridor was behind me, a dark maze waiting to claim me again. Then I heard a soft whimper, like a breeze carrying a fragile sound. It was coming from somewhere deeper inside the room, closer to the corner. My heart raced as I turned to follow the sound, but the boy stepped further into the light, blocking my path. "Stay with us," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, twisting my resolve. "Don't you want to play?" I forced myself to look past him. "Lily!" I shouted again, desperate for a response, for the familiarity of my sister's voice. But all I heard was the growing hush of silence. The boy remained, unyielding, and I felt a burning urge to break free from this oppressive space. Then, through the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement, a shadow darting across the wall beyond the boy. That's when I saw it. An open door, just behind him, leading further into the unknown. My heart skipped a beat, and I realized I had to make a choice. I could run and risk what lay ahead, or I could stay and face whatever this empty room had in store for me. I clenched my fists. Fear twisted in my stomach, but the urge to find Lily surged stronger. In a split-second decision, I darted past the boy, pushing through the crack in the jagged darkness. My breath hitched in my throat as I crossed the threshold, unaware of what awaited me on the other side. I tumbled through the doorway and landed hard against a cold, dusty floor. The air around me felt dense and stale, as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. I pushed myself up, my heart still racing. I couldn't see much. A faint light flickered overhead, casting long shadows that writhed and twisted along the walls. "Lily!" I called again, my voice echoing into the void. The silence that followed was deafening. I took a cautious step forward, my senses on high alert. The room was spacious, lined with shelves that were sagging with forgotten memories, old books, dusty porcelain figures, and strange, leather-bound journals. I felt the weight of eyes upon me. Turning slowly, I scanned the room, but there was no one there. "This isn't funny," I shouted, hoping my bravado would mask my fear. But there was no reply. Against the far wall, I noticed a large mirror that seemed to distort the room behind me. I hesitated as I approached it. Something about the glass felt wrong. As I drew closer, I could see shadows moving within the reflection. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Were those fingers? I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the illusion, but the movement persisted. Then, out of nowhere, a shrill laugh echoed through the room. I froze. The sound was familiar in the most unsettling way. It was Lily's laughter, yet it sounded twisted, marred by something dark. My heart clenched as I turned toward the sound, desperate to find her. "Lily!" I called yet again, panic bubbling up inside me. I heard the laughter again, but now it was followed by a soft sob. It wasn't just laughter anymore. It was tainted with fear. The last remnants of my courage pushed me forward, towards the sound. As I stepped deeper into the room, the air grew colder. I reached for the first object I saw, a dusty old journal resting on a table. I opened it carefully, its brittle pages whipping up clouds of dust. The words blurred before my eyes. They were written in a hurried scrawl, half-formed sentences about games and shadows. The last sentence sent chills down my spine. "Never play with the mirror." Before I could process the warning, the laughter erupted again, fierce and mocking. Heavy footsteps echoed behind me, and I spun around, the journal slipping from my grip and thudding to the ground. Emerging from the shadows was the boy, his eyes gleaming with an eerie light. He pointed at the mirror, grinning wider than before. "She wants to play," he exclaimed, a voice full of excitement. "Look!" Without thinking, I dashed to the side, desperate to get away from him. The mirror loomed large, reflecting an image of something that made my blood run cold, a figure that looked just like Lily, trapped within its confines, pressed against the glass with a look of sheer terror on her face. "Lily!" I screamed, my heart shattering at the sight. I reached out to touch the mirror, but a sharp jolt of electricity coursed through me, forcing me back. "Don't touch it!" the boy shrieked with laughter, reveling in my fear. "You'll lose her forever!" I stumbled back, my mind racing. The boy's words loomed ominously in the air. I had to rescue her, but the mirror, it was a trap. As the reflection of Lily faded further into the shadows, I felt a sinking dread. Time was running out, and I needed a plan. Then, the laughter died down, replaced by a whisper that ricocheted off the walls. "Play with us." The corners of the room began to darken once more, and I knew I needed to decide quickly. I had crossed into a nightmare, and now the nightmare seemed ready to consume everything I loved. I felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. The air was thick with a palpable dread that made it hard to breathe. I couldn't stand there any longer, paralyzed by fear. I had to act. While the boy's laughter echoed, I surged toward the mirror again, defiance consuming me. "Lily!" I shouted again, my voice clearer now. Each syllable felt like a lifeline. I pressed my hands against the cold glass, willing her to hear me. Her reflection remained a blur of panic, and in that moment, she looked up, her eyes locking onto mine. "Get me out of here!" she screamed, her voice muffled yet desperate. The image wavered like water rippling from a thrown stone, and I could faintly see the outline of something moving behind her. My heart raced. Whatever was in that mirror wanted her. Suddenly, the boy lunged forward, his laughter morphing into a shriek of anger. "Stop!" he yelled, and I felt a wave of cold crash into me, pushing me back. I stumbled, gasping for breath, and fell to the ground. The boy mussed his hair, eyes wide with untamed glee as if watching a show. "Let her go," I yelled, my fists clenched. "Make me," he taunted, his smirk unsettling. Just then I noticed something glinting in the darkness beside me. It was the journal I dropped earlier, the one with the warning about the mirror. I fished it out from under the table, flipping through the brittle pages. "Never play with the mirror," I muttered to myself, searching for something, anything that could help. There had to be answers in this madness. The last page held a detailed drawing, an intricate symbol. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, pulsating with an odd energy. Below it the text read, "The one who shines dims the light." I wasn't sure what it meant, but the urgency gnawed at my gut. I needed a distraction. It hit me. What if I used the boy's own game against him, I thought, tossing the journal aside. Looking the boy in the eye, I said, "If you want to play, we can play. But I need something first." "Like what?" he asked, tilting his head in curiosity, intrigued by the challenge. "Let Lily go. Then I'll play." He paused, his brow furrowing. "Why would I do that?" "Because I'll show you how to really play," I replied, my own voice trembling. "You don't want to lose your fun, do you?" The boy's eyes sparkled, a mix of interest and malice. "Fine, I'll let her go. But only if you win." With a sickening grin stretching across his face, he took 2 steps back, leaving a path between me and the mirror. "Let's see if you can outsmart me." A new chill ran through me. I had just struck a bargain with something I didn't understand, and my heart sank at the stakes. But I couldn't let Lily stay trapped. The room buzzed with anticipation, and I felt time racing against me. Before I could take another step, the air shifted, and a dark figure lunged from the depths of the mirror. I gasped, barely able to comprehend what I was seeing. That's when everything went dark. I jolted awake, heart pounding, the darkness pressing in around me like a suffocating blanket. For a moment, I had no idea where I was. The remnants of my dream faded, leaving behind a ghost of fear. I pushed myself up on unsteady arms, squinting against the gloom. The room was eerily silent. "Lily?" I called, my voice breaking the stillness. No answer. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the dim light. I was still in the cabin, I realized. The mirror was in front of me, but it seemed different now. Shards cracked across the surface like jagged memories of what had just happened. Suddenly, I felt a chill brush against my neck, a whisper of wind that sent shivers down my spine. I turned quickly, scanning the shadows. There was something about the atmosphere. Tension hung thick, palpable, like static before a storm. Then I noticed it. The journal lay open on the floor, the final page illuminated by a sliver of silver light cutting through a crack in the boarded-up window. I crawled over to it. My hands trembled as I traced the strange symbol with my fingertips. "The one who shines dims the light." The words echoed in my head, taunting me. But how? What did it mean? I was still lost in thought when I heard a soft thud from behind me. I whipped around, heart leaping into my throat. The mirror seemed to ripple, as if something was stirring within its depths. I held my breath. "Lily!" I shouted again, more forcefully this time. I needed to know she was okay. A figure emerged. It wasn't her, but something else. The boy from before, a twisted grin still plastered on his face. "You thought it would be that easy?" he sneered, his voice a chilling melody. "You think you can bargain with a game you don't understand?" "I'll find a way to save her," I shot back, trying to muster a bravery I didn't feel. "You can't keep her in there forever." "Forever? You're not even close." He laughed, and it echoed off the walls like a wicked symphony. Every choice has a consequence. Before I could respond, the mirror pulsed with a cold light, and a figure stepped out. It was Lily, but she seemed different. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. She was staring at me, yet it felt like she was looking through me. "Lily!" I cried, reaching for her. But the air between us buzzed with something dangerous, a barrier filled with tension and dread. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You have to break the deal." "What are you talking about?" I was bewildered, torn between the horror of her situation and the laughing boy's presence. Then I noticed the shadows shifting behind her, dark tendrils creeping toward her like hungry fingers. Panic sprang to life, gnawing at my thoughts. "No!" I screamed, moving to break the invisible wall separating us. That's when I saw it, a glimmer in the shadows, something waiting just beyond reach. A new threat, one that hinted at far worse than I had imagined. Lily's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of fear and urgency. "You have to choose," she urged. "Now!" Just then, the boy leaped forward with a howl, his laughter echoing in the darkness. The mirror shimmered, threatening to pull us both into its depths. The air crackled around us, and everything dove into chaos. I stumbled backward, the full weight of dread thrumming through me as the boy lunged toward Lily, his laughter merging with the chaotic energy swirling around us. I had no time to think, only to act. "Stop!" I yelled, trying to force my voice through the cacophony. "I can't let you take her." The boy halted mid-stride, his grin flickering as my words affected him. "You have to play first," he spat, eyes narrowing. "You think you can win a game against me?" I felt the shadows closing in, but something deep within me ignited, a flicker of hope amplified by Lily's fear. I knew I couldn't let him dictate the rules anymore. "Fine, let's play," I yelled, feeling a surge of defiance. "But I'll play by my own rules." His smirk twisted into a snarl, but I saw the glimmer of intrigue in his eyes. "What game, then?" "Let her go first," I declared, swallowing hard. "Then we'll see what you can do." One step forward, and a tremor surged through the air. The walls shuddered, the reflection in the mirror rippling like a still pond disturbed by a stone. "You think you're clever?" he said, but I saw his unease. "She's bound to this place, just like so many before her." "But not anymore," I shot back, my heart racing at the realization that maybe, just maybe, I could turn this around. "I'll find a way to break it." The boy hesitated, then shrugged. "All right," he said, his tone dropping into a dark melody. "Let's spark the game." With a snap of his fingers, the shadows hissed, and it felt like the air shifted entirely. A pulse emanated from the mirror, and Lily's form blurred, shifting back into focus. She stood there, bloodied and bruised but alive, looking more like a specter than my sister. "Lily!" I shouted, desperately reaching out for her. But she flinched back, shadows wrapping around her like chains. The laughter rang louder, a remnant of fear's past vibrating through the very floor I stood on. "Walk away now while you can," she cried, desperation thick in her voice, but my resolve held firm. I wouldn't let this be our fate. "The game starts now," the boy jeered. "This is how it goes. You follow the whispers until you find me. If you can beat me, she's free. If you don't—" He let the sentence hang, his grin widening into a cruel smile. The surroundings twisted, thick shadows trapping us in this cocoon of darkness. I could feel weight pressing down on me, trying to draw me into the depths of my fear. But I could not give up. "I'll find you," I vowed, my voice steady despite the churning chaos around us. "And I'll bring my sister back." As the boy dissolved into the shadows with laughter that echoed into the void, I felt the way ahead shift. The walls warped, and I could feel a presence guiding me, the whispers morphing into directions I had to follow. Drawing in a breath, I stepped forward. The shadows slithered as I passed, whispering secrets only half heard, tantalizingly close yet slipping away like sand through fingers. As I ventured deeper into the unknown, shadows danced against the walls, forming shapes that flickered like memories. I could feel their malicious energy, but also glimpsed shades of lost innocence, children trapped much like Lily. "Lily!" I shouted again. My voice crackled through the thick shadows, met only with silence. But each step drove me on. I could feel her presence. Then, suddenly, a door swung open ahead, creaking ominously. The faint glow of light shone through the crack, illuminating dust particles that floated aimlessly. My heart raced faster as I approached, a part of me terrified of what lay beyond. But I was driven by love and determination. I pushed through the door and into a room filled with glimmering objects, glasses, toys, and memories all jumbled together like remnants of so many lost souls. In the center stood a stage, where the boy perched, watching me with gleeful curiosity. "Well done to my little seeker. Now let's see if you can keep her safe." Anger ignited inside me. "Release her," I demanded, feeling the energy shift around us as anger battled desperation, a battle both old and new. "You think they can be saved," he whispered, tilting his head as if I were a fool. "They are the lost, trapped here forever just like you will be." "Just like you will be," I echoed, eyes blazing. I opened my heart, channeling everything I had into the air around us, a surge of emotion bursting forth, a golden light scattering the shadows and shattering the boy's illusions. "Don't you see?" I shouted over the howling winds gathering around us. "You can't keep fear alive without us." The boy recoiled, horror flooding his face as the light expanded. I felt the walls tremble, and cracks formed, allowing more light to seep in. He couldn't resist. His hold on this place, on the despair and abandonment, started to splinter. "No!" he screamed, his voice rising to a crescendo. "You'll pay for this." I felt it. The faint connection to Lily, the quiet, hopeful spark that flourished in this storm. "You can't take her," I yelled into the chaos, reaching out for my sister, whose voice flickered like a candle in the wind. Then, like a violent rush of air, the shadows broke, splitting open, and suddenly, there she was, emerging from the darkness. Lily, alive, vibrant, her spirit shining bright. The boy stumbled back, panic etched across his face as she rushed to me. "Hold on tight," I yelled, grabbing her hand as the light flooded the room, pushing back the boy and the shadows. In one swift motion, we burst through the barrier, escaping the darkness that had held us captive. I felt the air shift, the atmosphere lifting as the boy's piercing screams faded into nothingness. As the last tendrils of darkness disappeared, we emerged into the cabin, gasping as light flooded the space once more, sunlight pouring through every window and illuminating every corner. I collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed with relief. Lily was here. We were safe. But there was still unease bubbling beneath the surface. Had we truly escaped, or had we merely postponed the inevitable? I looked around, half expecting the boy to reappear, taunting and teasing. I turned back to Lily, who stood gazing into the cabin's corners, her expression a mix of confusion and wonder. "What just happened?" she whispered, shaking as if trying to wake from a dream. "I don't know," I admitted, heart still racing. "But we need to leave this place, now." As we hurried to gather our things, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something had shifted, that the darkness still lurked somewhere close by. Even as we stepped out of the cabin moments later, I glanced back, half expecting to see the boy standing there, grinning. But the cabin remained silent, the whisper of pine trees echoing around us. It might be over, I thought, but unanswered questions lingered like shadows. Had we broken the hold completely? Or would the past rise again to claim what it had lost? Some mysteries would never be resolved, I realized. But as we drove away, hand in hand, I vowed to protect Lily and keep the darkness at bay, for however long I could. I moved to a different city the following week. Sometimes I wonder if the memories are tied to a place or simply the shadows that follow. But mostly, I try not to think about it.